Last week, we talked about Microsoft Teams and shared our top 10 tips. But many of you told me that your company prefers to use Zoom for meetings versus Teams. And yes, in March of 2020, Zoom had a few security challenges they needed to fix before many of you could use Zoom at work. They have fixed them, and they are now a very popular option for meetings, conventions, and training. I've been using Zoom for about 5 years now, but in the last 18 months, they've added a lot of bells and whistles, which makes our meetings a lot better. So this week, we are sharing the top 10 tips for using Zoom. And our first tip comes from Laura Dunn from Ottawa, Ontario. Laura shares that she uses Zoom best when she has two screens set up. On her first screen, she can see the participants in gallery mode, and you can actually set that up to see 49 people on one screen. They're pretty tiny, but you can do it. And on her first screen, she has opened her chat box and her participant list, along with the participants' cameras. So once you open these options, you can drag and drop them to the side of your screen or wherever they work best for you. This way, you'll never miss any of the activity going on in the chat, as well as listening to the meeting. On her second screen, she has the full presentation or the shared screen so she can see all of that. Now, I am also a big fan of multiple screens, and I set mine up exactly the same way. I want to see everyone if I can. I want to see what's being shared on the screen, as well as what's going on in the chat box. And I want to see the attendee list changing if it's changing as well. Are people dropping off? Are they attending late? All of this is relevant to me. And if you're taking minutes or notes, it's likely relevant to you as well. Laura Thowalt from Houston, Texas brings us tips number 2 and 3 today. Tip number 2 is to ensure that you designate a co-host in case anything happens to your connection. The host controls a meeting. So if something happens to the host, something happens to the meeting. If there is a co-host, the co-host automatically becomes the host. So if something happens to a technology connection or whatever, not to worry, the co-host automatically takes over. Technology can go sideways, be prepared. Her next tip is to become friendly with breakout rooms. Even for team meetings, they are good, and they can add a lot of stress if you don't know how they work. You need to be host or co-host to manage the breakout rooms. So while you can set them up before the meeting, you are then assuming that everyone is signing in on the email that you sent the invitation to or the corporate email, and that doesn't always happen. And then it's a scramble to get people in the right breakout rooms or move people around. Be sure that you know how to move people, how to change the groups, or even be able to drop in and visit a group to ensure they are doing the task you want them to do correctly. I'm amazed, somewhat disappointed at how many people can't even find the little blue join button when we're on working with breakout groups. So make sure you have a lot of patience working with breakout groups, but they work well. Michelle Morford from Marysville, Washington says that she ensures that she renames anyone who dials into the meeting just using their telephone. When they're not logged in with a camera and they're only a dial-in participant, the phone number is the only thing that's going to appear, which doesn't identify who's on the other end of the line. Michelle can rename from her co-host or host position, and then she can change the phone number to the caller's name. And then this way, when she's taking minutes, she knows who made the motion or who voted which way. Now, you can also change your own name anytime when you log in via your own Zoom account. In the top right-hand corner of your camera or your photo image, you'll see 3 tiny little dots. Select those 3 tiny little dots and then choose rename. Now, depending on my meeting, I change my name to be appropriate for that group. If I'm doing training, it's say Rhonda Scarf. If it's just a meeting, it'll say Rhonda. Sometimes I change it up to have a little bit more fun with my audience as well. When I was on the World Administrators Summit, I put Rhonda Canada because that's who I was representing. So be sure to be comfortable to change your names, especially if you share your Zoom account with someone. Beverly Byron King from Little Britain, Ontario brings us our 5th tip today. Beverly is the master at using the newly announced integrated apps. You can use apps that create interaction, play games such as Kahoot. You can have them for your working groups and use Asana without sharing your screen. You can use them within Zoom, or there's even an app for taking minutes. So if you plan to use any of the interaction apps, you need to ensure that everyone has installed the latest updates. Interaction is fun for team energy and engagement. but your intent will backfire if only a few people can engage in that interaction. So be sure that everyone has updated their Zoom account before your meeting. Julie Perrine from Indianapolis, Indiana, reminds us that if you are hosting the meeting, you need to have an assigned moderator to keep track of any tech issues or back-end issues while your meeting is running. If someone logs into the meeting and they have issues with their camera or sound, the entire group does not want to watch you troubleshoot it and waste the team's time. So have someone who can handle it while the host of the meeting is ensuring that the meeting is continuing as scheduled. Your moderator can communicate with them offline if necessary or off camera, but get that tech piece off the screen. Number 7 is from Warren Munn at On the Right Track, right here. Warren's pet peeve is when someone isn't looking at the camera when they're speaking. We see this when we're watching the news at night, so you need to make sure that you're looking right at the camera when it's your turn to speak. Know where the camera is and look directly into it, and not at the other participants on your screen or a screen completely separate from where the camera is. It looks really goofy to talk like this, right? So many people have the camera on the bottom of their laptop view, and our view is right up your nose. Others prefer to place it up high. I don't know, maybe it makes us look skinny or something. And then I'm looking at the top of your head when you're speaking. So if we were all in a room together, I wouldn't be looking at either of those angles. I would expect you to be looking at me when you're speaking because it just feels better. So look right into your camera when it's your turn to speak. Leslie Hartwell brings us tip number 8 this week. When meetings are scheduled months in advance, be sure to check that your link works before your meeting. Sometimes link change if the corporate license has changed or things have changed. Make sure that your link is working, because if not, you can be sure that panic will ensue 2 minutes after the meeting has started, and your meeting will start late and people will be flustered at the beginning. Leslie also says to be sure to embed your password directly into the meeting invite. Unless you always use the same password and always use the same people, you can be sure that many of the people will not see the password on the invite, and then they can't log in. So passwords cause frustration and panic. So if you use passwords, be sure they are part of the link so that you send to the participants in advance. Number 9 is a bit of a giggle, but still an excellent tip. Sue Hutton from Ottawa, Ontario reminds us to always wear pants. And I'm sure we've all seen those video collections of Zoom wardrobe malfunctions in the last 18 months. We've all gotten a little bit comfortable with business on the top and party on the bottom, or yoga on the bottom. So be sure that you're appropriately dressed in case you need to move quickly and you forget to shut off your camera view. Or you may not be aware that sometimes people can see more than you think they can. If you're one of 49 little pieces on the screen, you think you're a lot smaller and don't see it. So professionalism is important. Which brings us to our final tip, and it's from me. Pay attention to your sound. Your sound, as well as the sound of the participants in your meeting if you're host or co-host. Now, I use a free add-on called Krisp. KRISP. What it does is it blocks any sounds that aren't my voice, such as the dog barking, Alexa talking, the kids, or the doorbell ringing. I know that not all of you are able to install programs like that. So if you cannot, be sure that you're using headphones if there's other sounds in the area so that we don't hear them. If you are the moderator or the co-host, learn where the mute all button is and use it as necessary. Now, if you use mute all participants will automatically be muted in one click, instead of reminding everybody, somebody's microphone's on, please turn your mute on, and trying to figure out where the sound is coming from. Now, if you are looking for panelists do not get muted when you use the mute all. So if you have people that you want to be able to speak freely, make sure that when you're setting up the meeting, you set them up as a panelist. That way you can quickly kill any sound that is interfering with your meeting without muting the sound of your presenter. I'm confident that video meetings and presentations are here to stay. So be sure you know how to use Zoom like a pro. Good luck.